Reading 20 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume Quaramid, Ugle, March 2nd, 1946. Commentary on being sealed against life. Eventually, we must become channels for this teaching. If we can pass on this teaching as it is taught, we get something for ourselves. In order to do this, something must be sealed in us, sealed tight against the effect of things happening outside us. The work must be given a place in us where eventually nothing from the external world can affect it. We spoke some time ago about the work being like a new being forming in oneself, and how one has to protect this being and fight for it, often against the logic of the external senses. We spoke last time of the meaning of the foot. Your foot is your external side, which touches life. I will speak sometime more fully about what the eyes mean in contrast with the foot. But briefly, the eyes mean esoterically one's inner psychological understanding, as distinct from the understanding that one gains from the senses or one's foot. It used often to be said in the work that we have to go against life. For example, you read the papers and see how everyone in the world seems to be angry and violent, and you may have the thought, what is the good of the work if everything is going in this way? Now, does not such a thought mean that you have not sealed off the work from the influences of life? One is letting one's attitude to the work get mixed with things belonging to the great machinery of life, just as if one expected external life to correspond with or conform to the work. This sealing of oneself off from life so that one can guard and keep separate the work ideas is necessary. It has to be done sooner or later. The work is under other laws than life is. Its source is from another direction. If you judge the work by what happens in life, you will not understand it. Here in this work, we are studying something different from life. We seek to come under influences different from the influences of life. We try to form something in ourselves that life cannot shake. Whatever happens in life, whether war or peace, poverty or wealth, bad weather or good weather, failure or success. The idea is that we have to form in ourselves a place where the work exists and have to guard this place. As you know, the work teaches that everything that happens in life happens in the only way it can happen. It says that life is a great machine. It teaches that organic life on Earth serves a cosmic purpose. This sensitive, living film surrounding the Earth is used for a deliberate purpose. Yet there is a chance for man, an individual man, to disconnect himself from some of the mechanical laws of life and begin to grow through more conscious laws. When you take this standpoint, the non-correspondence of life with what you expect becomes no longer a source of negativeness. And if you feed sufficiently on the ideas of the work, you are able to guard this inner place that we spoke of, and then events that formerly dragged you down into negativeness no longer have that power, because you begin to have the power of the work. As I have often told you, do not try to find the will of God in life. The Lord's Prayer begins with the idea that God's will is not done on this earth, but may be done for you. We spoke last time about making shoes and how the work had leather to sell to make new shoes. We also spoke about how our life shoes wear out, at least in certain cases, because some people seem satisfied with their life shoes. One ancient teaching of esotericism was given under the name of Hermes. From this arose the term hermetically sealed, which was used in esoteric alchemy. Esoteric alchemy was based on the idea that man, as base metal, could be transformed into gold, that man, regarded as some metal, say lead, as he is at his present stage, could become, by some knowledge and the practice of it, turned into gold. This was esoteric alchemy. Exoteric alchemy was based on the idea that actual lead could be turned into gold, which is a possibility. A hermit was a person who followed the teaching of Hermes and sought to seal himself off from the effects of life by going into a cave or desert. This is not the idea of the work. It would be getting rid of life artificially. We have to seal ourselves from the effects of external life when they are actually happening to us. Here comes in the idea of practicing non-identifying. With what, by the way, are you identified at this moment? Of course, without self-observation, you have no idea. Without it, one is simply identified. The state remains in darkness. It is not brought into consciousness. In general, when such is the case, at most moments one is not making an effort to separate oneself from the effects of external life, and so there is nothing sealed. Such a person is not living consciously. How can we say that such a person is working? But he will not recognize that he is behaving in this way unless he lets light into his inner darkness, observes his state. When you do not know how you behave, all this is dark to you. Yes, you are doing it all the time, but you do not know that you are doing it. This is the strange thing. You are not conscious. You are asleep to yourself. It is correct in this case to say the person is a machine, a mechanical person. Now, in a machine, nothing is sealed. Nothing is made tight against the impact of external things. It is turned by life, as a machine is turned by a belt. Let us return to what was said at the beginning of this paper, that each one of us must become a channel for the teaching of this work. To become a channel in this sense, the work must be sealed off from life. Otherwise, life will keep changing it. So, one must never put the hand on the mud of one's feet and bring it up to one's eyes. The understanding of life is one thing, and the understanding of this work is another thing. Life must not prevail over or stand higher than the work. A man in this work is a man who, in spite of external circumstances, whether they are helpful or not, continues to work. Life does not shake his understanding of the work. His eyesight, which in this case means insight, maintains him. Esoterically, there are two kinds of blindness. There are the blind people whom Christ healed, people who are blind internally. And there are the blind who have had their inner sight awakened and now are blind to external life. We know that we can take a thing from a life point of view and from a work point of view. When one takes something as work, the result is different. There is a higher level of understanding above that on which one's feet rest. On this level, one realizes that everything that happens to one in life is the best thing that could happen to one, if one takes it as work, as a means of development. You realize in a practical way how you are created a self-developing organism. You no longer take life as an end in itself or expect it to be as you wished, but you take it as a means to an end. I bring in here once more the phrase that to an intelligent person, neither life nor one's own life can be understood in terms of itself. An additional idea is necessary. Have you ever meditated on this when you were in life difficulties? Have you glimpsed that they may be just what you need? In ancient myths, many esoteric ideas were introduced in the form of allegories, which, if taken literally, seem nonsense, but if taken psychologically, have meaning. You remember when Odysseus landed on the island of Circe. He was given by Hermes a magic herb which protected him against her enchantment, although his companions were turned into swine by her spells. Do you think this was an actual herb? Maybe, perhaps, aconite. But I fancy that this work, if it were really taken into oneself, would begin to have the same effect, namely, to protect you from the enchantments of life, from its illusions, from its mirrors. You remember the work myth that we are all in a hall of mirrors? In it, everyone is rushing, as they think, straight ahead to progress. But owing to the mirrors constantly changing their angle, everyone is only going round and round in a repeating circle. A man may already feel something of this. I mean that we may think that we are tricked by life and not merely blame people or things. Yet, without the ideas of the work, we have no way of understanding this right suspicion. I was turning over some notes the other day written long ago and came across this passage which I will quote. It was concerned with a man who had recently joined the work. He said he had the impression when he returned from any entertainment or social function that he had been tricked, not by the entertainment or by his hostess, but by something he only felt dimly, but it was always present with him, some power that made him feel rather a fool, and seemed to use him for purposes of its own, and yet not malevolent so much as business-like and practical, acting for its own purposes amongst people who are foolish enough to let themselves be hypnotized by it. I quote this because it seems to me that here you have a man who is beginning to have traces of magnetic center. He feels in some way that he is being used by some power which he cannot resist and which is tricking him. I would say that if a man begins to feel that life is tricking him, if he begins to feel this hall of mirrors, he is already beginning to reach a stage in which this work and its ideas could become useful to him. I mean that he might understand that life and his own life cannot be understood in terms of themselves, but need another interpretation. So the work might be of use to such a person.